Hello there, and welcome back to the video series, Dad, I Want to Hear Your Story. Today we are on page 30, and we are continuing, we're continuing? Yes, we're continuing the parents and grandparents section of the book. So I got a couple of pages done, and I figured we'd go through them. So, first question, what is the favorite memory of your mother? So, there we go, hold on. I started thinking about this, and the very first memory that popped into my head, figure it's the first one, right? Might as well use it. I was probably 6, maybe 7. I'm thinking more 6 though. And for whatever reason, I decided that I was going to run away, that I didn't like living in the house anymore, and I thought that for whatever reason, I don't even remember why, I'm just going to run away. So I had this little like GI Joe Army plastic backpack. It was just this little plastic thing. It looked like an army backpack, rucksack. And I stuffed a couple of toys in there, and I think I put a canteen in there. Wasn't even sure if I had water in the canteen, but I put it on my back. And as I'm walking through, I walked through the living room there, and I walked through the little connector to the kitchen. And as I'm walking into the kitchen, my mom goes, "Oh, where are you going, Michael?" And I said, "I'm running away." And she kind of stopped me. And now, the funny thing is, I remember the memory. I have this memory, but I don't remember what my mother said to me. But it was obviously very loving and very tender and very sweet. And she convinced me that I should not run away. So then I went back and I put my toys away. So that's just a favorite memory that I have of my mother. Why that all of a sudden popped into my head, but that's the memory. Um, I mean, and you can't just have one favorite memory, right? So I thought about another one, and this was her reaction when I told her I was going to DeVry. So to set up the story, I had gotten out of the Army in July. I had drove from Alaska to Washington State with my best friend Terry and his wife and their daughter. I wind up making my way from Spokane to Vancouver, Washington, and I got a job doing asbestos removal at a Georgia Pacific paper mill down in Toledo, Oregon. And I didn't last that long there, about a month or so. I hated the job. And so I drove cross country back from Vancouver to Spokane and then all the way back to New Jersey. Got home, I think it was the end of September, somewhere in there, or mid-September, and tried to look for a job, couldn't find a job right away. And since, job opportunities or, getting a job, they were kind of slim with just the Army experience, decided to see what I was going to do for college. I remember sitting down eating lunch one day, and the TV commercial for DeVry came on. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to drive down there and check it out. So drove from Newton one day down to Woodbridge, where DeVry was, met with the, I don't know, counselor, admissions person, whatever, and I wind up signing up that day. So filled out all the paperwork, enrolled in DeVry. It was going to start, like the first week of October. And I remember driving home and walking into the kitchen, and I told my mom, she's like, "Well, what happened?" And I said, "Well, I'm all signed up." And she's, "Really?" And I'm like, "Yep, I'm going to be going starting on this date, and I'm going to be studying this, and they can arrange for an apartment." And she's like, "What about paying for it?" And I said, "Well, because I'm on my own, I can get a lot of grants, I can get a lot of student loans. I've got the GI Bill, which will be able to pay my rent and maybe a little bit of money to live." And the tears started welling up in her eyes. She could not believe that I was, going to go to college and go to school. And so that was a pretty nice moment of, my mom was just really proud of me in that moment, and she was so excited for me. And so, yeah, nice tender memory of my mother. Um, and then, this goes back to my childhood. So I think I had mentioned My mom grew up in a family of 8 children, and the family business was the Honesdale Florist. So you had the actual retail shop, and then up on the hill was the house where my mom grew up. And attached to the house were like one, two, three, four different greenhouses. And if you can think of a greenhouse, like a big building, but the sides and the top are all glass, and it's a framework of iron pipes that this building is constructed out of. So it is the ultimate jungle gym. So us as kids, me and my two sisters, we would go up very frequently, at least once a month. We would drive up on a Friday or a Saturday. We would spend the night a lot of times. And going to see my mom's family, my grandmother, my grandfather had passed away, so I don't remember him. But going to see my mother's family, staying with my grandmother, and spending time with my sisters, and then inevitably my cousins, all kinds of cousins would come over, and we could spend the entire day playing tag, playing hide and seek, just inventing games where you would have to climb all over these greenhouses. It was the ultimate childhood playground, and I will never forget. I'll never forget those times of going to my grandmother's house, and enjoying that. And then the last memory I have of my mother, or fun memory, not that I don't have any memories, but just the ones that came to mind. So we had gone on a family vacation. I don't know, I might have been a teenager, elementary school, or maybe early seventh, eighth grade, whatever. But we went down, I think it was Wildwood. We went someplace down the shore in the family camper, stayed at a campground, and one night we're going out to dinner. So it was a big deal in my family to go out to dinner. We did not do it very often. So going out was a big deal, and it was a really great treat to do it while on vacation. So we go to this. It was kind of just like I don't know what kind of restaurant it was. Maybe it was like a seafood restaurant down the shore, and they had a specials board out in the lobby. So we waited to get seated. We get seated. We sit down. The waiter comes. He takes our drink orders. He comes back and he goes, "Is everybody ready to order?" And he looks at my mother and says, "Ma'am, what would you like to order?" And she said, "Oh, I saw in the lobby there on the specials board you had a seafood quickie." And he's looking at her like, not sure what it is that you mean. She goes, "Yeah, seafood quickie. It was out there and it looked really good. So yeah, seafood quickie." He says, "Well, let me take a look real quick." So he goes away from the table, he goes out into the lobby, and he comes back and he goes, "Ma'am, that's a seafood quiche." So she thought seafood quickie was quiche, or she thought quiche was pronounced quickie. So she was so embarrassed that she's like, "Oh, I'll have the surf and turf," which later on she said she hated it. But that was just a funny memory of my mom because, just it was kind of simple, and it was cute that she, mispronounced it. So, moving on, what is your favorite memory of your father? So, I have quite a few. I narrowed them down to a few. So the first one was hunting related, right? Because my dad introduced me to hunting, and that was something that the two of us would do together. We hunted together. So I remember my first deer, which my dad, we went out to a farm in Stillwater, New Jersey. My father knew tons of people. He could always find places to hunt. And we went to this farm, and we went up into the field and on the edge of this field. So my dad says, "Sit here and don't move." I said, "Okay." So it happened to be on, I think it was a Saturday, which means you could shoot anything. So I'm standing there. I have a 16 gauge bolt action shotgun shooting slugs. And I hear a rustle off on my right, and I see a deer running through the woods. So I pull up my shotgun and boom, and I loaded another shell, and I see another deer and I shot at him. Boom. Now, mind you, this deer, they're running full bore. I don't know if I hit it or not. So anyway, they run down the hill in the woods and they run out in this field. So I think I'm 12 or 13 and I'm like, I'm going to go get this deer. So I load more slugs, more shells into the shotgun, and I walk down on the bottom of the hill. It was only like 10 or 15 yards. And I'm walking out in the field, and off in the distance, I can see these two deer. There's one deer standing there, and there's one deer laying down. So I'm literally walking with my shotgun up, and I'm walking in the middle of this field, and the one deer got up, and I shot at it, and I'm assuming I missed, and I loaded another shell, and I walked a few more feet, and the deer kind of trotted a little bit, and then it turned broadside to me, and I aimed and I shot again, and I just remember it like its head flailing back, and it just went poof, and it just dropped down in a heap. The other deer that was with it took off. So I'm running, kind of like walking very fast with my shotgun up like this in the middle of the field. And I walk up to the deer, and there it was laying there. I shot my first deer. So my father, he comes walking across the field. I see him off in the distance, and as he gets closer, I go, I got it, I got it. And I was so excited. And he walks up and he's like, I can't believe you got it. He said he heard me shooting off in the distance because he was towards the other end of the field. And he goes and he looked down and he saw into the field and he sees me walking and shooting and he goes, what in the hell is that boy doing? Because he didn't initially see the deer. He had no idea what I was shooting at. And after I shot the second time, he saw the one deer run off to the far edge of the field. So that was the story of my first deer and the first deer with my dad. Then, like another hunting story. So if you've ever seen in my office, I have here you can see. Whoop, hold on, I just dropped that. Those antlers right there. That was from a deer that I got when I was a teenager. So I think I might have been 17, and I was in the woods at my brother-in-law's property. Actually, his parents owned it in Swartzwood, so we call it the cabin in Swartzwood. And I was there hunting with my dad, and I was in one section of the woods, and my dad was in the other. And I see this buck. I think there might have been 2 or 3 deer all together. And I saw this buck, and I shot it, and I dropped it. So then I gutted it. And at the time, as some teenagers do, I was experimenting with smoking. So I had a pack of cigarettes with me, and I, tried to do it, and my parents didn't know, or I assumed they didn't know. So after I skinned the deer, I smoked a cigarette, and I threw it onto the ground, and then I dragged the deer out. And I'm telling my dad where I shot the deer and where I was sitting. So as I'm gonna drag the deer to the truck, he goes, "Well, I want to go up in the woods and just see where you shot it." And I said, "All right, go ahead." So he goes up in the woods. Do you know he came back? He found the cigarette butt on the ground and he picked it up. And when he met me back at the truck, he's like, "Here, you dropped this," and he handed me the cigarette butt. I'm like, "Come on! I can't believe you did that." And okay, so that was that story. And then the next story was the first time I went one of the first times I went squirrel hunting with my dad. And I'm standing up against a tree. He's like 30 or 40 yards away, standing up against a tree. And I'm just kind of, looking around and just kind of staring off into space and looking around. And I did not see the squirrel that was jumping and walking towards me. And my dad is standing over there laughing to himself because he's like, does he not see that squirrel? It's practically right on top of him. So finally, When I looked down, I literally, the squirrel was like 10 feet away. I didn't even bother bringing the shotgun up to my shoulder. I just shot him from the hip. I just kind of brought it up to my hip and shot it, and I blew the whole front leg off the squirrel. It was so close, and then the squirrel is like jumping up and down, flopping around, and I loaded up another shell, and I was gonna blast it again, and my dad goes, "No!" And he's like, "Don't shoot it again. There won't be anything left of it." So about 30 seconds after that, the squirrel died, and I picked it up, and we wound up eating it, even though I shot off the whole front quarter of it. That was fun. So another favorite memory that's not deer related. So flying a kite. So when I was in Cub Scouts, this was, I think it might have been a Cub Scouts or Weblos, before Boy Scouts. There was a kite flying competition in the Cub Scouts. We went up to what was then Don Bosco Seminary. Now it's called Sussex County Community College. And there is a huge athletic field at the bottom of the hill from the college. And they're going to go there and fly kites. Well, I didn't have a kite, and my dad was like, "Well, we're not going to buy one. We're going to build one." So we got out the encyclopedia, World Book Encyclopedia, and went to kites. And he found in the encyclopedia how to build a kite. It was a regular triangular, kite with a big long tail. And my father never throws anything away. Wonder where I get it from. And he found some wood, some like quarter-inch sticks. They were like a long dowel-looking sticks, and we had some string, and we, followed the directions, and we bent the kite to make like a bow, and then the long piece, and we had the tail, and we covered it in like a heavy-duty crepe paper, like it was almost like streamer paper. It was pretty thick, and we covered that in this streamer paper, and I glued it on there, and we had kite string and the whole bit. So go out there, and everybody's going, "Oh, that thing's gonna rip. That kite's not gonna work. That kite's not even gonna fly. That kite's gonna fall apart." Well, wouldn't you know it, I got that kite in the air because it was a nice windy day, and of all of the people and all of the kites that they had, my kite was the best, and my kite flew the highest. Because they gave you like, I don't know, 5-10 minutes to get your kite as high as it would, and then they would come around and put a piece of tape, like stick your piece of tape on where the string was. So then when you pulled your kite in and wound it up, then when they got back on the ground, they would extend them out again, and they would measure from the tape to the end of the kite. And my kite went the highest, so I won. So there you go. Memory of Dad helping me build a kite, and I won the Cub Scout kite competition. Another one, model rockets. So when I was a kid, one of my hobbies was building and flying, launching these model rockets. If you've ever been to Hobby Lobby, you can find them at Hobby Lobby. They come in a package. Estes makes them, and a bunch of other companies makes them, and they have these little solid fuel engines that you would stick in the bottom and put either a fuse up in there, or they have this like, little igniter. And anyway, so I saved all my money from all these little jobs that I have, and when I had money, I would go out and buy a new rocket and put it together, glue all the parts and sand it, and I really did a nice job of making these rockets. And every once in a while on a Saturday, I'd say, "Dad, can we go fly rockets?" And sometimes he'd say no, or "I'm busy," or, "we can't." But then some days he'd be like, "All right, go get your stuff together. Let's go fly rockets." And we'd go find a field out somewhere, and I'd get all my gear, and I'd, launch these rockets, and they'd go hundreds of feet in the air. And then, they'd come down on a parachute. And so sometimes I would lose them, and sometimes I wouldn't. So the main part of flying rockets. So yes, my dad, who was always busy, he always had projects to do on the weekends. There was always something to do. This one time that we went and flew rockets, the rocket, it was down in I think it was called Liberty Park. It was the park on the edge of town, the end of Water Street, and on the outskirts of the park, what was used to be Newton Dump. Newton used to have its own dump, and past that dump was like it was like a swampy marshland, and you know it was just swamp. So the rocket went the wind caught it after the parachute came out, and it went down, and we knew that it went down somewhere in that marshy area, but we didn't know where. So we wind up, driving around and trying to see if we could see it, and we wind up going through the dump, and sure enough, we found it. You couldn't get to it because of the water, but you could see that it was 30 or 40 yards. And would you believe that the parachute got stuck on a cattail? If you've ever seen the cattails that grow in like swampy areas, it's this long cattail reed. The parachute was stuck on the top of that, and the actual rocket was hovering over the water. So I was so upset that I lost the rocket, and obviously my dad could see that I was upset. He actually knew somebody who had a rowboat, and the following Saturday, we went to some guy's house. We borrowed his rowboat. We drove through the Newton dump, drove to the end of the dump as far as you could drive. I helped him carry this rowboat out to the water. We got in the rowboat. We rowed out there to where the rocket was, and he used the oar, and he lifted the parachute up off of that reed, and I got my rocket back. And I was so thrilled that my dad cared enough for me, loved me enough, whatever, to actually get a rowboat to get me a rocket, which was probably $1.99, $2, whatever it was. Probably was not that expensive. So there you go. That is one of my favorite memories about my dad, that he would help me get my model rocket back. And then of course there's dinners. So in the Kimball household, my father was adamant that we ate dinner together. Full stop. Think about our life in our house in Hackettstown, or or here in Delaware, wherever we live, mostly Hackettstown. It was not very often that we sat down at the table at the same time as an entire family and ate dinner. Just life, for whatever, seemed to always be in the way, or somebody would eat early, or I was working, or I was traveling, or whatever. But in the Kimball household growing up, my dad was like, I don't care what's going on. I get home at 6 o'clock. We eat at 6:30. We all sit at the table. So some of my best family memories of I sat on this side of the table with my back against the windows. My father sat on the right-hand side, my mother sat on the end, and my two sisters sat across from me at the table. And some of the best memories growing up, and best memories of my father, and jokes and laughing and everything, was the family dinners. That was where we got to talk about our day and what went on, and sometimes we had to talk about report cards, and they weren't that nice, but I have great, great memories of dinner times and talks with my dad. Then, of course, I could not forget, favorite memory, my first car. My first car was a 77 Pontiac Ventura, silver, two-door, V8 engine. I just love that car. It was great. And my dad, helping me buy the car, helping me, service it. We had to put new tires on it. So anything and everything related to that car, my dad was always there to help me. And so I always remember that. And there was a long page, so I have a lot of memories. And then, of course, another memory we could not be complete without. Growing up, my dad had many, many jobs, but one of the jobs that he had was he worked at a place called the Sussex County Battery Station. But it was basically just an automotive garage. automotive parts sale or parts and service. So you could take your car there to get fixed. They had a parts department, like a little retail. You can go in and buy parts for your car. And during the many, many years that he worked there, one of the jobs that he had was doing the inventory. So all of the inventory of all of the stuff that came in and out. So if, he had to catch up, he would work at night, and he would go there at night and to give my mom, either to give my mom a break, or maybe she wasn't home, he would bring us three kids. Well, we thought it was the greatest thing in the world, because it was like a big jungle gym. It was like a big playground, running through the doors, playing hide and seek, playing tag, climbing all over the racks that they had where they stored all the tires. I mean, we had a ball, and we would come home just filthy dirty. So that was a really, really great memory of my father, just going there, spending time there, and it was great just being able to hang out. So I'm looking at the time going, okay, I've been talking for 25 minutes. I still have more pages, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and stop here, and I will pick up the next couple of pages in a few days or so. So thank you very much for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, like and subscribe, right? That's what everybody says to do. And spread the word. If you know anybody that would be interested in watching me answer the "Dad, I want to hear your story" questions, share the videos with them. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.